Okay, we're live. How you doing, guys? It's Wednesday. Time for a little live check-in. I gave you guys a little bit of warning this time. Good for me. See looking at the live preview here, it's about 12 seconds behind. Okay, well, we'll just have to live with that. So, welcome to the chat. So this last week, I got like a few people like bugging me about this fractional frame rate business, and I was like going to make a video about fractional frame rate a long time ago. Like I really wanted to make this thing like, why are we still shooting fractional frame rate? Spoiler alert, I'm fine with it. I don't have a problem with it. The internet, however, seems to have a major hard-on, at least parts of the internet seem to have a major hard-on against fractional frame rates. I don't get it. But this week somebody was throwing at me some articles of some group of filmmakers that are coming out and trying to do a movement against it. And I wrote a video for it, and then I waited a couple days on it because I was busy with other stuff, and there's no movement on it. So I feel like, well, do I really need to give this movement attention because it's not really an issue? No one's really talking about it except for a couple people online, and they've been talking about that forever. So I figured I'll just make it a live thing so I can at least get it off my chest and mention it. And by the way, also I was a little late because I'm trying to get my iPad to stream the comments, but that ain't happening. That ain't happening. Okay, so let's go to this website here. So this is the article. This is the group that has been kind of going. I'm going to try to see if we can do this. Okay, so I'm going to show you my desktop, which is going to be an interesting example here. So there's me in the corner. Hey, I'm looking through vMix. That's what's running the live stream. All right, this is a group called the Phase Out Fractional Frame Rates, no more 2398.com. So I'll go through a couple of the site and kind of discuss some of the points that they're trying to make and really kind of why this is really just falls apart. So fractional frame rates, e.g. 23976 per second, were developed with the advent of color television, blah, blah, blah. See the history, and they include my video in the history. So I feel like I'm involved with this somehow. Their continuous support, I'm down here, continuous support is creating numerous issues and extra costs for content creation and distribution industry. I'm not sure that's true. We'll get back to that. We are calling for the electronic display industry to begin to phase out support for fractional frame rates over time so that content can be displayed in its intended frame rate. Well, two things, if you phase out support, that means you have to create more costs down the line to support the thing. And then secondly, what makes you think that 23.976 isn't the intended frame rate? We'll talk a little again more about that later. They say they want to include displays, recorders, playback devices, and cameras, among others. Here are the issues that they bring up. Now, I want to address each of these issues because I feel like this is the kind of the crux of the issue here. Increase in cost of production and mastering to account for both frame rates. Frankly, I've never had an issue. I'm going to come back to me. Never had an issue mastering for both frame rates. Now, look, I may be kind of lucky in that I've never had to like actually do it. I work in 23.976, and I never ever go to 24 straight because I live in the United States. And that is our frame rate at 23.976 for television and for basically everything that we do. So I never go to 24. If I had to go 24 with a DCP project for like distribution for film, then I would just make a switch. I would literally just click a little button and says, okay, convert this to 24, and 23.98 becomes 24. It just speeds it up by 0.1%. So I don't understand the argument here. Let's go back to me here. I'm trying to juggle both of these. So the second point is the increased cost of distribution, storage, QC check transfer, as all assets need to be stored in both formats, doubling the needed storage space. Again, when we're talking about all assets, I imagine they're talking about the final product. The final product you might want to store it in both 24 and 23.976. But is that really that big a problem? Is storing two different versions of the file, is that big an issue? Again, QC check, do you really, it's the same thing. Like the only difference between 23.976 and 24 is essentially what's the master clock. It's the same exact data. You're just running your clock a little bit slower to count for the 23.976 for the fractional frame rate. Like, I don't see what the issue is here. Like, okay, double storage. Well, I mean, why can't you just, for the distribution side, why can't you just store one or the other, and then when you play it back, just change the master clock depending on what version you need? I don't see how this is an issue. Here's the one that really bugs me. Okay, the fractional frame rate in use have an infinite set. Oops, I'm sorry. Have an infinite set of repeating decimal digits resulting in values being used in practice, 23.98 or 23.976. The reality is 23.976, 023976, 0239, and so forth and so on. This is a major misunderstanding of the technology. I'm going back to me for full screen here. Because we're not dealing with decimals. See, the reality is the number is 24 times 1,000 divided by 1,001. Like, just because it's a repeating decimal doesn't mean it's irrational. It's a rational number. It is defined as 1,000 divided by 1,001. And since we oftentimes have 1,000 frames, it's very easy to get 1,000 frames. This is really not that bad. You know what else is also a repeating fraction? Repeating fraction is 1/3. We deal with it every day. 1/3 is 3 repeating, right? Now you could say, well, it's 3 repeating, or it's 0.33, or it's 0.333. But whatever you're doing, whatever decimal you pick is always going to be an approximation. And that approximation is going to require some sort of error correction if you're going to work with decimals. I mean, if you're going to work with fractions, you know, after 1,000 frames, you do the math right, it's exactly perfect. The decimal issue is not an argument. And people say, like, well, not 23.976 or 23.98. It's just rounding. It's just nomenclature. Like, the only reason they picked 23.98 is because it's got 4 significant digits, 2398. Because it matches 29.97 or 59.94. 29.97 is also a repeating decimal, by the way, and so is 59.94. They're all repeating decimals because they're all fractions. They're all the same fraction. So saying that, oh, it's a repeating decimal and that's the reason to get rid of that just doesn't understand the math. Like, that's just confused, and yeah, that's a terrible argument. All right, let's go back. I'm doing a terrible job here of doing this graphic here. Okay, so inaccurate frame is indicated on some recording and playback devices reported as 24 FPS, while in reality running at 23.976, which introduces a mismatch in editorial and out-of-sync issues down the line. Now, this one I agree with, because the problem is you've got all these computer manufacturers kind of entering the broadcast realm with cameras like webcams and other things that aren't technically broadcast equipment. Right? And they're calling themselves 24 and it's straight 24. But they're not broadcast equipment, and they're not following broadcast specs. Therefore, they don't have the fractional frame rate. And that does create issues when you're dealing with, you know, synchronization. I mean, the trick is to know that everything is recording in either 24, straight 24, 24.0, or 23.976. You just don't cross the streams. You figure out one way or the other and go that route. Just don't mix them. In fact, I mean, if you haven't watched my video on timecode, I did a video on timecode that was sponsored by the guys at Ambient, and they laid it down pretty squarely to me. They said, well, here's the deal. If you're in the US, you're shooting 23.976. If you're in Europe, you're shooting 24. Europe and everywhere else. Everywhere that doesn't have the fractional frame rate. That's all. That's all. Like, just pick one. Pick a lane. Just pick a lane. Don't try to swap back. So I agree. Now, equipment manufacturers, yeah, they should be a little bit better job. They should do a little bit of job like labeling. Hey, this is straight 24.0 or something, so that people know. But then again, it's not that hard to figure out. All right. Next point they're making here is the creation of 2 extra timecode, drop frame and non-drop frame. Well, drop frame is important. Like, if you want to, drop frame is how you match your 59.94 time code to a 60 hertz clock. I mean, it's not that crazy. The example I was trying to give in my video was, I said, What happens if you had a cake counting machine that you had a cake, I'm going to draw a cake real quick on my little diagram here, that was exactly 1/3 a cake, right? So you have a cake that is 1/3. I should probably go full screen on this one. Let me switch it back. I know this is really high-end stuff I'm doing here, right? So we got a 1/3 cake, and then we got a machine that counts these cakes, right? I'm going to draw this machine that counts the cake. But it can only work in decimals. So we can assign the cake a decimal. It's 1/3. Let's assign it a 0.3. I know this is off, but 0.3. It's 0.3 a cake, right? That's close. We're just rounding down to the 10th. So after 3 cakes, our error is already 0.1 cake off. After 10 cakes, right? After 10 cakes, the machine is going to say, well, we have 10 times 0.3, that's 3 cakes, right? 10 times 0.3, that's 3 cakes. But in reality, we have 3 1/3 cake. So we're already off by a little bit, right? And then after 30 cakes, the cake machine will, or after 30 of these 1/3 portions, 30 times 0.3 is 9. Even 9 cakes. But we have 30 cakes, that's 10 cakes. So the way you solve that is to say, okay, well, we know there's an error in our decimal. We know that we're off by a little bit in our error. So we'll just correct it. After 10 cakes, after it counts 9 cakes at 0.3, add a cake. And then we're back on track again. That's what drop frame is, really. You know, that's really all it is. And I don't remember the exact rules. Check out my video on time code and we'll talk a little more about that. And then non-drop code is basically not accounting for that error. I mean, it's not a big deal. Okay, let's go back to this site here and go with the next portion. Let's click on that, and I go fade, and I go to the website. Okay, so here we go. Inaccurate time frame indicated with some record. Okay, we already talked about. Okay, so here we go. The 0.1% slowdown propagation down the pipeline, which creates even more fractional frame rates. I don't understand quite what the sentence means because it doesn't propagate down the pipeline. The whole pipeline needs to be this one rate, like either 24.0 or 23.976. Just pick one. The whole pipeline needs to be that, and you just stay there. And it doesn't really create 59.94. They're related. They're the same thing. So it's not that sentence doesn't make sense. And then the last one, slowing down the adoption of high frame rate technology because of the cost and complexity of supporting fractional frame rates. Yeah, that's not the reason why high frame rate technology has not been adopted. It's just because people don't like high frame rate for certain technologies. You know, like television. Here's the thing: there is no 119.94 whatever fractional frame rate for the high frame rates. There's 120 hertz. You know, that's the standard. That's the standard. The fractional frame rates are going to be the lowered ones, and especially the historic ones. All right, what do they propose? We believe fractional frame rate is a technology of the past and should be phased out. I agree, it is a technology of the past. I just don't think it should be phased out. Why would you get rid of it? Like, we have a whole library of content that is 23.976 or 29.97. We have all this content that is of that frame rate. Why would we want to just drop support for it? Just leave it. It's not causing any issues. They invite manufacturers to use fractional and non-fractional frame rates and accurately. Well, I mean, I agree with accurately indicate the correct frame rate, but why would you encourage non-fractional? It doesn't make sense. Like, I want stuff to be working. I don't care about a couple decimal points. We invite industry to transport and display content at the intended frame rate. Again, what if 23.976 is the intended frame rate? And then the other argument too with that is, and this is what bugs me. I got this quite a few times this last week, and somebody got really angry with me because I was trying to explain why the American, like 23.976 isn't the wrong frame rate. It's the right frame rate. It's just allotted for the engineering. But no one can visually tell the difference between 23.976 and 24. Like literally no one. I will bet everything that no one will be able to tell the difference in a properly displayed format. Now, earlier someone was talking about how like Xbox displays it at 23, but the Blu-ray is 24. That's a mismatch of streams. That's going to cause issues. But if I showed you 24, 23,976, you could not tell the difference. Period. Like no one could tell. No, you can't tell the difference. It'd be like saying to a gamer, hey, look, I'm going to show you a display that's 1,000 frames a second. 1,000 frames a second, right? And then I'm going to show you, can you tell the difference between 1,000 frames and 1,001 frames a second? Like most gamers are like, no, you can't, no. There's no possible way you could tell the difference. Anyhow, next point. Sorry, I'm not getting your comments quite yet because I'm doing this juggling thing, so I'm like trying to, I can't really read the screen here. So we invest all stakeholders, content creators, industry leaders, television, movie executives, editors, and mastering artists to agree on a timeline which fractional frame rates no longer supported by new equipment. Again, why are we wanting to get rid of it? Why don't you just keep it and it works? Okay, our goal is for the content creation distribution change to remain at its intended frame rate and to convert content only for legacy formats and devices. This other question here is, well, if you got a new device, the odds are the new device is probably going to be pretty smart. Like today, TVs are pretty smart. They can display all kinds of frame rates, right? Like the guy I was getting angry with me was from the UK, and his TV can show all these different frame rates. How come I'm getting 23.976? Well, your new TV can handle it, so it doesn't matter. It's the old stuff that matters. Like the old, I have a CRT TV at my house. My mom won't let me get rid of it. It's like 23 years old. But the thing is, it works exactly the way it did 23 years ago. It has not decreased in color. It has not showed any deterioration as far as the quality of the image. It's standard def, but it's the same standard def image it was 20 years ago. Like that TV would need some sort of device to convert a 24 signal to the signal that would take. So the new stuff can handle the old stuff. The old stuff just can't handle the new stuff. So why don't you just keep it for the old stuff? That's what gets me. Any fart. Why now? Emergence of distribution, blah, 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 blah. Some argue that fractional frame rates are, here you go. Some may argue that fractional frame rates are needed for legacy format displays. However, the rare event the legacy does not support 24 or 30, the content would be converted to adjusted frame rate by playback device instead of the source. So they're saying, buy something for your old machine versus your new machine, which probably can handle the fractional frame rate just fine. No, buy something for your old machine. Force the industry to buy stuff to fix the old stuff. I don't know. Okay, that's the end of the site and so forth. They got a group and all that. So I'll go back to your comments here. Let me put myself back on screen, full screen here. So that is the site. Now, again, I feel like this is just boneheaded. And I know there are some people on there that are like, I think relatively well hooked up. I think it was somebody from Marvel's on this thing. But really, it doesn't make any sense. Like here, and I wanted to kind of go on a little bit about fractional frame rates because so many people online, I went on the Reddit comments on one of these articles, and some people are like, I can't believe it's such a nightmare dealing with this stuff. I'm like, I don't see it as a nightmare at all. Like to me, I just pick a frame rate and I just shoot in that. I forget about it. 23,976, that's what we're working in. It's that meme face, that one guy. I don't know what's so hard about that. I mean, look, and partly I'm coming from this a little bit from a nostalgic point of view, but I think because I come from a little more of a historical take to it. Because my dad was an engineer and a frugal man, and my grandfather was an engineer. I did not know my grandfather because he died way before I was born. My dad had me when I was pretty old already. So I got kind of a sense of like the way people felt, engineers felt, at least in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And the thing is, when this was decided, when they reduced the frame rate from 60 hertz to 59.94, reducing it by 0.1%, right? When they did this, the television market was small, but it was already booming. Like millions of sets were already out there. And this is a brand new technology. This is like, let's say like the very, very first I can't even make a good analogy. It's like the very first iPad came out, right? And then it was like 3 years after, and they're like, okay, well, all you guys that bought iPads, sorry, but the new stuff, yeah, the new color programs, you have to buy a new iPad in order to watch it because we're not going to let. No, that wasn't a possibility. Like that was very, very bad. Like, and so I mean, that's what the NTSC did eventually did actually do that for a few months. Watch my video on the war for color television. It's like, it's fascinating what happened. So, I mean, for a few months, NTSC was like, yes, you all have to buy a new TV if you want to see color television. And then the Korean War happened, and they're like, that was dumb. Cancel that because we need all this technology for the Korean War. And then they canceled it, and then RCA came out with their compatible color. And then people who had their old TVs could actually watch the new color programs, but in black and white. So, and then the fact of the matter, too, is that the new television channels didn't release color for a long time. So the way I look at fractional frame rates is I look at them not as like a terrible, terrible short-sighted thing that these engineers did. I think of it as a brilliant stroke of genius. I think of it as like, this is a battle scar of basically being the first to market. Now, what happened with PAL, what happened with CCAM, they came almost a decade after NTSC. So they sat back and they looked at NTSC like, oh, I see all the mistakes you're making. You know, you the color signal, that's really dumb with the way you're doing it. We should phase alternate it so that the color will be more consistent. You know, so that's how they came up with PAL. Same exact concept, and the numbers are a little different. So you don't have the same kind of weird math that we have. But I see it as awesome. Like I think the fractional frame rate is a cool story. It's really cool. And I'll also add that the PAL and CCAM, Europe was destroyed after World War II. And where did the fighting happen? It happened in Europe, right? London was bombed like crazy. United States basically unscathed. That's why the Americans were able to come back so quickly after the war, because like literally nothing was blown up on the continental U.S. So it was like, switch from guns to butter, boom, and well, maybe not boom, but it was an easy transition. So we had a much quicker adoption of color television than the Europeans did because they had to rebuild. And then by the time the color technology is better, they could say, okay, well, now we're going to switch. And, there's a longer story, too, with the BBC and the 405. And I don't remember the story off the top of my head, but I know there was like dual systems for a long time, too. So anyhow, that's why I think the fractional frame rates are fine. Now, if you were telling me, John, this is the way it is, the NAB has come down and said, tomorrow everyone's going to switch from 23.976 to 24, from 29.97 to 30, I'm like, okay, because literally there is no visual difference. There is zero visual difference. I'm just saying, like, I stick to the broadcast standards because, well, honestly, because most of my life I've worked around broadcast. So, and then I used to have a device that would literally, I could not feed it a 24 signal. I had to feed it 23.976 in order for it to work. So, like, I was burned really hard on that. So that's why I always stick to the broadcast. To me, they're safer. But I don't care. I honestly don't care that much. Like, if the future were shooting 24.0 versus 29.3976, I don't care. But I will say, though, we do need to keep support for 23.976 because everything we have in our library of television history, even a lot of movies, all the Blu-rays, the DVDs, those are all 23.976. So why not just support it? And then problems are already solved. I mean, all the engineering issues have already been solved for it. Why get rid of it? I just see absolutely no reason. So, all right, let's get to your comments. I saw Mr. Pink has a funny one. Any opinion on Gemini Man? It looked like a video game, the action sequences. Funny thing about that is literally one of my number one videos of, like, I constantly get views on is my review of Gemini Man. Like, I literally did a review of that, and people hate me for it. Hate me. low fat or low whatever. It's not the visual difference in playback. It really sucks when you're shipped video and audio from different sources and have to mix it. Exactly. I agree with that. Like mixing the streams is a bad idea. Like if we're doing production, we all want to say, hey, get the news point, pick a lane, pick a frame rate, right? Like I totally get that. The problem, like, now maybe the problem is not necessarily like dropping support for one or the other. It really should be maybe devices need to be able to differentiate between one or the other, because it's really just a matter of changing the master clock. Nathan Dixon says, yes, keep support for 2396, but move 2424 for new production, new systems. Again, I'm agnostic on that. Like I mean, I don't see a need to do it. Like, because if it doesn't work, I mean, I'm a legacy guy. Hey, I do history videos. Like I obviously like legacy stuff, so I don't care. Like I want to say shoot 23.976, but then I don't really care. Like I know, if you like, I did a gig where I did some work for the Discovery Channel, and if you want to talk about like strict QC and quality control, if you don't know what QC is, like 2997, no question, not even 24. You cannot deliver 24 to Discovery Channel. No. 2997. None of that 24 business. Not over. Nope. 2997. And then you have certain like rules about where you can put stuff. You can't put stuff in a certain box because that's where the Discovery logo goes. Like there's a lot of rules for 2020 or for Discovery Channel that are very, very strict. So in that case, like you don't dare shoot 24, something like that. Anyhow, aren't there on the fly frame rate converters? Probably. Like I said, I think it's really just a matter of changing the master clock. I know on my C200 camera, like I can switch between 23976, which I think is called 2398, 59.97, 29. I can switch between those, no problem. However, if I want to shoot 24 straight, I'd have to switch the master clock to 60 hertz. That reboots the camera, and then the camera can shoot the 24. So I think it's just a master clock issue. It's not really the frames. Anyhow. Yep. And that's the problem, too. Various devices lie about what they're doing inside the converter, and that really is the problem. Like, I think that's the problem is a lot of these newer companies that are producing stuff for video acquisition or video stuff, they don't understand broadcast, or they just overlook broadcast standards. And so that's where we're getting all these headaches from. Again, I don't think the solution is to get rid of 23.976. It's not to get rid of the fractional frame rates, to actually understand what's going on. Another thing I was pointing out I wrote a video on it. I don't think I want to release it because it's like, I don't care. I don't care enough. I'll talk about it on live stream, but I don't care enough to make a video about it. So I feel like this is going to provide the surface. But your job as a professional, if you're a professional editor or a professional movie maker or video maker or whatever you are, your job as a professional is to understand your equipment. So, yes, if your equipment says it's 24 but it's 23.976 or whatever, you need to understand this stuff. Like getting rid of it, it's not being professional. That's what separates the amateurs from the professionals. Professionals kind of understand the technology, understand how things work. And we do it. And yes, there's going to be problems. There's going to be issues. All professionals have had that story. Like I remember I was having issues like connecting an Apple laptop to a switcher because the Apple was a big freaking thorn on people's side because they would always deliver non-broadcast specs. So you have to run it through a converter to convert it to, drop the frame rate. So Apple was an example, like it happens. But, that's the price of being professional. Anyhow. Dr. Dothraki says, I got a DBM piece, pocket camera 4K so I could shoot integer frame rates. Like, can you tell a difference? Can you literally tell a difference? Like, if I put them side by side, oh yeah, that's 20. No, you can't. No one can. True Film says, until about 2011, most film projectors ran at the tolerance. I didn't have any problem as long as it was in the ballpark. That's an interesting point. Yeah. Like, how accurate is historically, because I was getting into an argument with this guy talking about like, old films weren't shot at 23.976. I don't know, was there a tolerance for it? Maybe. Are we talking about 0.1% difference? Like, yeah. Lovecast says, keep fractional playback, use whole numbers moving forward. Sure, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't. If we keep fractional frame rates, there's no reason why we can't keep shooting fractional frame rates. I don't see anybody could tell the difference. Yeah, Dr. Dathrakis, I cannot tell the difference by looking. Well, there you go. The only reason you should shoot integer frame rates, okay, this is coming from the folks at the timecode folks. The only time you shoot for integer frame rates is if you're shooting for film and for outside U.S. productions, U.S. Japan, right? Like I was literally told this was like if your stuff ever touches a TV, you should be shooting American television. If your stuff ever touches an American television, you should be shooting 23976. Now that was granted maybe 10 years ago, that advice 10 years ago, so it's a little old, a little dated. But that's the kind of the way I've been looking at it. And since, like, even if you're going to making a movie, like, you're going to be previewing on TV screens, you're going to be doing a lot with TV, so you're always going to be touching a TV screen somewhere down the line. John Sheena, why can't we all be pals? But yeah, I think okay, so one of the guys I watch is a Dr. Z Dog, and he made me really laugh, and I thought of this as a joke that somebody was saying from PAL country that they like, oh, you know, I grew up on PAL, so I'm not used to the 3-2 pull down. And I said, well, I was thinking like, well, you know, nowadays every monitor, every TV these days is going to be 60 hertz, even if you're in PAL country. So if you're getting 24 on 60, then if you're not used to 3-2 pull down, in the words of Yoda, you will be. I don't think I did that right. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little cough here. That's not COVID, I swear it's not. But no, it's anyhow. All right, well, let's see. Yeah, it's the third time I saw a PAL joke. Is there a demand for inline devices easily made if it demands $1? I don't know. I don't know. How many 29.97 sets are now left in broadcast analog instead? There's surprisingly many. A lot, I imagine. Just imagine like every single airport. Like how many 29.97 sets are there in every single airport? And then basically the infrastructure, like, and somebody was talking on Reddit too, like a lot of satellites too. Broadcast satellites, they're all fractional frame rates. So we can't necessarily just go up in space and tear those down. There's a lot of infrastructure in place for fractional frame rates. Like that thing I always worry, like people, the argument I was going to make too was in the old days, like when we talk about technology and engineering, at least in the 50s and 60s, they kind of felt more like, let's make things compatible. Let's make things work together with each other. Nowadays, I feel like society, because we're so accustomed to the rate of technology changing so fast. I mean, like seriously, how long is your iPad good for? How long can you run your video card? How long before you need to buy a new video card? 3 years? Laptops 4 years, 5 years? I mean, they're so quickly replaceable, right? That we forget that, you know, compatibility industry standards are a good thing. But nowadays, I think we're so accustomed to just replace, throw out the old, replace with the new. Like, I think that's really dangerous. And I get that sense when I'm online. Like, people want to get rid of 24 frames a second because it's old. Get rid of it. It's old, dumb. But, I mean, again, to me, this triggers feelings about my dad. Well, I love my dad dearly. He passed away when I was 19 years old. And we were, like, best friends. Like, because he was retired, so he spent a lot of time with me. We talked endlessly, and I just adored my dad. And he was an engineer, and he had this kind of mindset, like, well, you know, John, we want to make things as cheap and affordable as possible. We want to make things as easy as possible. And we didn't get cable till I was well into high school, and we had like one VCR, you know, and he was never one of these like buy and throw away. And I feel like I know my lifestyle. I don't think my dad would recognize my lifestyle. I buy a lot of stuff, unfortunately, and I do throw away some stuff. So yeah. Anyhow, back to you guys. There you go. Veggiet says, I think software should support any arbitrary frame rate. I agree with you. That's why we shouldn't drop the old frame rate. The new one will handle it just fine. Oh yeah, and then Pirate Game Boy says, I have a couple using it for game consoles and old computers though. And the thing with, I hear like the CRT old monitors are making a really big, there's a big community of gamers who love the old CRT computers. Even though the resolution is not as high, the motion on a CRT is better because it's not sample and hold technology. It's the flicker technology. Will film production ever go to 50 millimeter, which was highly underrated? I don't think so. It'll be simpler once everything is shot at 240 hertz and drop down to 24 and 30 or 23, whatever you want later. Sorry, Benjamin, that's not how it works. Yeah, Thomas says, why have 50 millimeter when you have 70 millimeter? Why not? Why do you have 70 millimeter when you have 125 millimeter? The Russian says, I worked in Russian television, so he's used to 25. Yep, very good. Very high frame rates call for very high ISO if you don't want to mess up your T-stops and depth of field. That is correct. Yeah, high frame rate. You can't just shoot high frame rate stuff because there's not enough light. You're cutting the light down. Yeah. Theo Gud Camino says, there's a good video by Matt Parker, Why is Television 29.97 per second? Strong. It's a pretty good video. I just can't. I like Matt Parker a lot, but he makes some stuff. He says some things I think are boneheadedly stupid. Like his math stuff is great, but like his conclusion, like, well, this is stupid. They should be smart like us Europeans that go into 25. Like that's just dumb. Like some of the Matt Parker stuff was just. And I'll be honest. Like recently, I hit a great video about the distance of keyboard stuff. And at the very end, he was doing this ad for a company. It was a VPN, and he started using Pirate Bay as an example. And I'm like, ugh, that's just bad taste. That's just dumb. Like he seems like such a smart guy, but he makes the stupidest decisions at the end of the video. I don't know. CRT nostalgia people, or what reminds me of vacuum tube people. The CRT monitors, though, I mean, I think they're for gaming. They have a point. But I'd rather have an LCD for like just for resolution and just for just looking at an image. LCDs, I think, are better. What matters is the software written by people who understand the history and application of these frame rates. Yeah, I don't think it matters if you're just going to have a bunch of filmmakers out there saying, we demand that you get rid of something that supports things out there. We want you to get rid of it. And that's the reason why high frame rate adoption is not happening, is because we're support all these fractional. I know. It says, oops, my phone's going off. I'll call her back later. She's obviously not watching the stream. All right. I never ever said anything stupid. I agree with you. No, it's just the problem with the Matt Parker video. Like they're scripted, so it's incorporated in the video, like the stupidity, which I never understood. Anyhow, True Film says, I have seen a photo of the 70mm print of Joker, pillar boxed correctly. They still print these. Cool. Alrighty, what else is there? Dr. Dothraki says I might have the 50th anniversary. Anyhow. So yeah, 70mm film. I would love to see. I haven't seen it though. I want to see. First, I do want to see. I need to go out to like LA sometime and see 2001 in 70mm. So I haven't seen 70mm. George says thank you for the awesome ringtone. Check. It's a Bach piece played by a European like brass quintet, and it's quintet. It's like a brass 10-person brass piece. It's amazing. Oh, it's amazing. And I'm a trumpet player, so I did like that. Oh, and by the way too, like I've been really, really like just amiss about going back to playing trumpet. And then somebody finally asked me if I wanted to play Matilda, the musical, down here in October. And I'm like, yeah. So I'm going to need to practice a little bit and get my lips in shape for Matilda. Matilda. If you haven't seen the movie, cute movie. Danny DeVito. And the girl from Miracle on 34th Street, that cute little girl who had some issues when she grew up. Poor, child stardom will do that to people, but she's really cute in that movie. Tara Fitzgerald says, but of course, that's why high frame rate isn't popular. It couldn't possibly have anything to do with the Uncanny Valley, or some viewers call it soap opera effect. No, right. It had nothing to do with that. That's fractional frame rate's the reason why high frame rate. Yeah, anyhow. Let's see. Let's see, what comments here? Hey, Mindo. I haven't seen you in a while. I recognize your bee avatar. Have you ever tried a long persistence monitor? All right, I'm missing all the comments here. John, C trumpet or B flat? I started on B flat. I mainly played B flat. I do have a C trumpet, which is actually a pretty decent Holton that I got, which is a B flat C combo. Like you can actually take the valves out and it becomes a B flat trumpet or a C trumpet, depending on which ones you put in. But I very, very, very rarely play that. Only when they called for it, like for an orchestra. Although most orchestra music is now B flat, so whatever. Although for a while, because I was being kind of a show off, I would go up to the community band with my C trumpet and then transpose on the fly. I got really good, pretty decent at that. The problem was the partials are slightly out of tune, so all trumpets are out of tune in different partials. But C trumpet being off by a step means that its partials are off to the B flat trumpet. So anyhow. Michael Silva, or Mikhail, I'm not pronounced properly. Hindsight's 2020. When you had to be the first, you make decisions that is not exactly great, but that is the feasible at the time. Exactly. That's what I felt about the fractional frame rate. It's a battle scar. It's literally the price you'll be paid for being the first on the block to do it. And everyone else learned it and did better. And I fully accept that PAL is probably a better system than NTSC. In the technologically sense, the phase alternating thing is probably way brilliant, and I wish they would have thought. But if you watch the war on the color television, there's a lot at stake. And there was at one point they had an idea that they wanted to put the spinning wheels in front of the screen to show you color, and that for a while was the thing. Oh yeah, there you go. Murphistic says once had to work with variable frame rate video. That was a nightmare. Not sure how good it would be for movies. 24 FPS for calm scenes, HFR for action. So I often get that comment saying that movies of the future need to be variable frame rate. The problem with that is every time you vary from the frame rate, every time you change the frame rate, it stops looking like a movie. So what evidently happens is the frame rate doesn't really activate like the sense of speed. It doesn't actually. In fact, the action sequences look worse in high frame rate than they do in low frame rate, because low frame rate you have a lot of blur, you have a lot of time in between the frames. Your brain kind of makes up that in between. So if you see a punch in 24 frames a second, you can miss the fact that the punch didn't actually land. That's why Bruce Lee was famous. He's faster than the camera, because the camera is only 24 frames a second. But if you increase the camera to 120 frames a second or 60 frames a second, Bruce Lee's not going to seem that fast anymore. So low frame rate actually improves the look of action movies. And like I said, the switch of frame rate doesn't really change the excitement of the video. It actually just makes you realize you're no longer watching a movie. It's a switch of medium. Like you look at it, oh shoot, I'm watching soap opera. Oh, now we're back to watching a movie. Oh, I'm watching a soap opera. Oh, back to the movie. You see this example if you have one of those old TVs that has the motion smoothing on, which doesn't always work, it like works occasionally. Like you're watching a movie, like, oh, this looks good, this is a good movie. Oh shoot, soap opera effect. Oh, okay, back we go. So that's what happens with variable frame rate. Yeah, Uranus says, sorry, Uranus. Matilda, yeah, Matilda musical is really cute, like really, really cute. I don't know how they're gonna pull it off. I saw it once at the Vista, and it was really Moonlight Amphitheater, really, really cool. I'm getting distracted because I'm thinking about this person who's calling me as a client, so I need to call him back. I'm getting distracted. Like, they got my video. They're gonna tell me what I'm doing wrong with that video. Like people always online say, John, you are so afraid of criticism. Like, well, I think I'm human like everybody. Criticism doesn't really, when you're getting yelled at or criticized online, I don't take it too well, maybe. But I learned with clients, I have no problem with criticism because I charge by the hour. You want me to fix something? Sure, that'll be another hour of work. It always adds up. I've learned to kind of lose my ego when it comes to client work. Like literally, I just I will try to, when I work with clients, I will try to deliver material. You have to be careful when you show the client the first rough cut. Like you can't show them you can't show them like ungraded. You have to know your client. If you understand your client understands that this is ungraded footage, like don't think everything looks gray. Like you have to understand your client. So you got to know when to show them the first cut. You can't show them the rough cut. You have to make it a little nicer before you show it to them, get their input, and then keep building it, right? With this client, I'm pretty comfortable that they understand that it is rough, especially if I explain it. It's rough. This is rough material. Rough. So, we'll see. But I don't know. Like I had really little instruction on this video, so like, you gave me a list of things to shoot. I shot them, and is this what you want? I hope it is. If not, I can do whatever you want. I mean, I'm fine with it. Anyhow. Schlitz says, a friend once tricked me into smelling his trumpet. Not a good idea. I can tell you from experience, not a great idea. Especially if it hasn't been cleaned in a while. Do you have to sync your video and audio for a live stream, or you do standard settings on your lip moving sound okay? Yeah, depends on how you're doing it. Like I haven't actually done any tests with this. I'm assuming my lips are in sync. I'm hoping they are. I don't know, but I am running everything through one camera, so they're all arriving in the computer at the same time. But I know if I'm working with a Blackmagic switcher, and I am recording, I'm sending audio through a soundboard separately, a Blackmagic A10 Mini, that I do need to sync. I need to delay the video or delay the audio by 3 frames in order to get sync. I believe it's 3 frames in order to get it to sync. Otherwise, it'll be a little bit ahead. So I do know that. But yeah, depends on the live stream. Like if you can send the video and the audio in the same cable, like from the camera into the computer, then they should be in sync for the most part. Again, sync is also one of those things where it's a gray area. Like literally, there's a chunk of time where it can be in sync. It's almost like you can be maybe a frame ahead, but you can be like 3 frames behind because the brain doesn't understand. Like it can understand late, but it can't understand early. It's one of those weird. It's the reality of how our system works. Now that is spam. I've been getting these calls from Texas, and they say, hello, we have found a package with drugs with your name on it. Press 1 to speak to an agent. And so I got pretty pissed off every time I get that call. It's like, well, how stupid do you think I am? All right, so I press 1, and I get the agent, and it's like, hello, Agent Smith speaking. Well, I'm not going to do the accent because that's kind of racist. Agent Smith calling. And I said, man, where are my drugs? And he said, fuck you. And he hung up on me. So I guess they weren't my drugs. Anyhow. Yeah, Simon says the pirate thing was a pie joke. Nevertheless, it was odd. I get where he was coming from because that's what VPNs are for. It is for that. But, like, you don't say it. And especially if it's like a public thing. It's like saying, well, it's like if you say, I want you to go watch, everyone use something VPN. Something VPN is the perfect site I use to browse porn all day and night. Well, you don't say it. Just don't say it. Anyhow. But yeah, it was just, I don't know. I wouldn't have taken it. Yeah, Mr. Mizzle says the vague criticism is the worst. It really is. Just tell me what to do. I'll fix it. Tell me what you want. I will do it. True Film. Rule of music. Never show the client a rough mix. They say, okay, approved. They might say, okay, approved. Darn. That's for sure. Stephen Guy says, I seem to be in sync, and I'm using a parsec to stream this to a spare TV, so maybe correcting things. I have no idea. Usually if you're using Bluetooth, it will really screw it up, actually. Hi, Donnie Pearson. How you doing? Hope you're doing well this afternoon. I'm hanging in there. It's getting a little warm, and I probably need to return this call pretty soon. So I have to go pretty soon. We'll hang out for a little bit and talk for a little bit. What handheld recorder do you recommend for video? I've been looking for a Zoom H6. Any thoughts about it or alternatives? I like the Tascam if you're looking for an alternative to Zoom, although I like the Zoom just fine. I have a Zoom F8N, which is not a handheld necessarily, but it's a beastie machine, and I like it a lot. Like I think it's quality, man. The Zoom F8N, you know, it's like half the price of a Sound Devices thing. It may not be as like functionally nice. The knobs are tiny compared to a Zoom or Sound Devices, but hey, for someone that doesn't do audio like every day as my job, and this thing works just great. Benjamin Dover says, when you get on VPN, you go straight to an FBI watch list. Sounds about right. Mindo says, ever wondered what your audience does for a living? I am IT support manager by day and aspiring filmmaking geek by night. What the rest of you? Yeah, what are you guys up to? What are you guys up to as far as your work? Let's go through some of these older comments here. R from MF says, what about shutter speed with the rise of 60 frames in online media? Do you think the 60 FPS for playback for real time looks more natural than the correct 120 degrees? So the 180 degree rule is a rule of thumb. You know, like all things in film and video, the rules are not set in stone. They're just like rules of thumb. They're things to think about. You know, like if you're shooting 24 frames a second, you really should be shooting 1/48th. If you shoot 1/50th, no one will notice because most DSLRs can't do 1/48, so most people shoot 1/50th on DSLR. And then people will adjust it slightly to accommodate for certain kinds of lighting that are blinking at a certain frame rate. You know, it's common to shoot 1/60th if you're shooting something with a 60 refresh rate light, even if you're shooting 24 frames a second. That makes sense to do so. You know, so 60 frames a second, I think the proper thing to do at 60 frames a second is to shoot it at 1/60th, 360 degree shutter. I think that's probably the best for shooting 60 FPS because it'll give you everything you want. It'll give you a pretty smooth motion. I mean, it's slightly the same amount of blur as 1/50th or 1/40th for 24, but it'll give you very, very smooth motion. Like I was watching the movie Won't You Be My Neighbor, I believe it was. Whatever, the Tom Hanks playing Mr. Rogers. And I was blown away by the fact that when they cut to the TV version, so what they did was they actually found the cameras that Mr. Rogers used to shoot on, and they recorded Tom Hanks doing the Mr. Rogers shtick act in front of it. So they actually used the same exact equipment, which is broadcast equipment, 60i equipment. And then I was watching and I'm like, whoa, this does not look like film. This looks like video. And I was like, are they switching frame rates? Is this a switch? No, like, nope. 24 frames a second, but they converted it from 60. And because of the smoothness of the shutter speed, it just looks so like video-ish. And I like that's kind of what made me realize it's kind of crazy. Anyhow, Mr. Mizzles is a personal assistant writer. Murph is Boa Mike is a software developer. A lot of tech guys. Stephen Guy make animation for architectural films. Used to do CGI. Oh, awesome. I would love to do 3D animation for architectural films, but I think it's probably beyond my abilities right now. Oh, here we go. Nice comment. I'll read. Wow, man, you help so much through your vids. My college has been here a long time since all your zealous face of yours. Much slots keep routing on. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, Zoom F8N rules. I really like that. I haven't messed around with the backup tracks yet. I'll have to try that. I just haven't done anything. Like every time I get worried about it, partly is I have batteries in it, and then I also have it hooked up to an Anton Bauer style battery, which will run it for like literally a week without any power. So that's what power is always my concern with that thing. Let's see. A lot of IT guys in here. A lot of IT guys. So, all right. Well, it is coming up on the hour here. Here's a question. Have I 3D printed anything cool lately? Yes, I have. Although I haven't a bear of a time with my 3D printer. I think my I put a new all metal extruder on it. Extruder. That sounds like something that you eat for breakfast. Extruder. No, extruder, which is the part that feeds the filament in, if you don't know what it is. And I put an all new metal thing, but I didn't calibrate the E steps, because you have to calibrate how many steps are in a millimeter of filament. And I think I've been printing a lot of stuff that is 100% infill. I think what happens is it's probably putting too much filament or too little, and it's clogging it. So I'll get through like the first couple layers perfectly, and then all of a sudden I'll just have a mess in my hand. So I've been having issues with it. I've been printing. My buddy's been doing FPV drones as well. I'm doing some FPV drones. I probably should do a video on FPV drones eventually. It'd be fun. FPV is an interesting game. It really is. I got myself a Cine Whoop. I'm flying around. So anyway, my buddy's been doing some FPV. He had me print a couple GoPro mounts for him, and I've been printing a GoPro mount recently because I'm doing a lot of time lapses for the city I'm doing some work with. So I printed up a GoPro mount that had little straps on it, so I could strap it to a tree. But the problem is, anytime you do anything that's practical on a 3D printer, my rule is it takes at least 3 iterations to get it right. Like, you can design it once, it'll never be right, because then you'll get it like, oh shoot, I made it too big. So you have to go back, design it again. Oh, okay, no, I made it too small. Then third time's usually the charm. That's my experience with practical stuff in 3D printing. It's like, never get it right the first time. So I kind of like don't really care to do it. And then I printed a little holder for a power bank too. I see somebody was kind of a power bank. a lot of tech guys. Any STEM ladies? Any ladies here? I know. My videos are like 91% male according to YouTube demographics. 91%. We are some serious sausage fest going on here. Oh well. John, have you done a video on shot listing by any chance? No, I haven't. I haven't even thought about it. That's an interesting one. It's more a pre-production idea, but that's a good one. Just learned that there are prop televisions that run at 24 hertz. Made to be shot on film. Interesting. That makes sense. Very interesting. Yeah, if it doesn't have a beefy power bank and it's going to eat through batteries like a hot knife through butter. Oh, you're talking about the F8N? Yeah, I don't trust the batteries in there. But the cool thing is, you can just put a D-tap to a Atom Bauer battery pack and it runs forever. 3D printed a fist and turned into metal. Check out if you want to make something out of metal. Yeah, I joked around that forging is my next thing. Like that, forging, I think forging for me is a little bit too far down the road because I'm not really cool with melting metal yet. But vacuum forming, that's the fun thing to do. Like if you could vacuum form, like I imagine like the original Star Wars and how they made the Stormtrooper helmets was they probably modeled the helmet out of wood or something or clay, and then they vacuum formed it, and then they could paint the vacuum form and they could create the. I mean, vacuum forming is like is like really cool, and it's pretty simple to do, I think. So anyhow. Ooh, an analog film technician. Cool. I think your avatar has a lot of tapes, I imagine, in there. I can't see it from here. All right. Hello, mate. I have a question. We're going to run out of time here. I have two A7 S3s and a Z1 use. Should I record with the camera or should I record vMix and edit them in DaVinci? It all depends on how you're shooting. If you have, so my kind of answer to this for a live event stuff, if it's something that is really predictable, then you can go ahead and do a live cut. Like I'm going to do a funeral session, like a celebration of life thing. I'm probably going to do that multicam and not edit it later. Although because I feel like editing later would require a lot more time. So if I could set up a multicam solution, I could do it pretty quickly versus taking an extra hour and a half to edit it. I could edit it right there and then I could just do minor cuts later. So that's my solution. Now, but if it's really complicated where you can't set up the multicam shoot really easily and you don't necessarily need to, then maybe you just shoot it the traditional way and do it that way. Is there any quality degradation if I do ISO record? Yes, there is. There always is, because vMix is recording basically like video data streams, so the quality is not going to be as good as if you record in the camera. Vax says I did video production in Panasonic VHS gear. Yeah, I remember that. We had those too. I do IT. I dig out the old video toaster. Yeah, I love the old video toaster ad with Will Wheaton, and what's his name? Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller. Oh, Adam Savage has good stuff on vacuum forming on tested. Cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. So, alrighty, guys. Well, I gotta get going. I gotta make a call back here. But thanks for hanging out with me. I don't think, yeah, after doing this video, I think I'm going to probably not make the video on 23976 because I don't think it needs to be addressed any further. But I do have a video, I did record another video on a cool thing I discovered with square waves. And it kind of just blows my mind. It kind of solidified for me the understanding of sampling rate. And why you need a little higher sampling rates, like why you don't record everything at 40 kilohertz, even if our theoretical hearing is 20 kilohertz. So to me, it illuminated everything. Like, ooh, I get it now. So I wanted to make that video. It's going to be very nerdy, and I probably have to do a clickbaity title, like Veritasium says. If you guys watch that Veritasium video about how called legit bait, right? I'm playing around with some ideas, like maybe call like this one test. Will this one test disprove Nyquist theorem? ... No, something like that. Anyhow, all right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me, and get rid of that comment. And we shall see you guys later. Take care now. Bye bye.